Ebola 2014, New Chance, New Global Response and Responsibility. Yeah. Since Ebola. Since Ebola virus was first identified in 1976, no previous Ebola outbreak has been as large or persistent as the current epidemic, and none has spread beyond East and Central Africa. Today, more than 1,000 people, including numerous healthcare workers, have been killed by Ebola virus disease. And the number of cases in the current outbreak now exceeds the number from all previous outbreaks combined. Last report.
It's been described as a war zone in West Africa. International relief organizations say the Ebola virus is spreading at an alarming rate and could take another 6 months to contain.
We don't even know how the sickness got into this country, and it's really killing our children, our families, and everybody. We are all suffering from it.
Just mentioning the word Ebola can create panic and fear among the people of Nigeria. Many simply don't understand how the virus is spread.
I heard that what brought it is a bat and rabbit and monkey. So you have to be careful because it's a sickness that kills quick.
Researchers suspect the first patient behind the current outbreak was a 2-year-old boy who fell ill and died last December in the village of Gokedo in southeastern Guinea. From there, the deadly virus spread to neighboring Sierra Leone, Liberia, and eventually Nigeria. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Ebola is spread through direct contact with the blood or bodily fluids of an infected person or animal, or with contaminated objects such as needles. Symptoms include high fever, diarrhea, bleeding, and vomiting. There is no cure, and during this current outbreak, about 60% of those infected are dying.
I urge the international community to respond urgently to the shortage of doctors, nurses, and equipment, including protective clothing and isolation tents. We need all hands on deck.
On August 8th, the World Health Organization declared the Ebola epidemic a public health emergency of international concern. The group stated the Ebola outbreak appeared to be vastly underestimated and called for extraordinary measures.
We've seen with the opening of new treatment centers, many more Ebola patients come forward. And so this has given rise to the belief that there are probably a lot of patients out there that we haven't traced or contacted yet.
The UN Health Agency is also urging Ebola-affected countries to start screening all passengers leaving international airports, seaports, and major ground crossings. The World Health Organization says while the risk of transmitting the Ebola virus is low, every precaution must be taken. Meantime, medical workers are putting themselves at risk in hope of saving lives.
15 of our health workers from this case management center have passed away. When somebody dies of Ebola, that time the virus is very violent. And in that case, we have to handle that corpse very well in order not for us to be infected.
The spreading of Ebola. Given the signs mobility and air travel in West Africa, EDD could reach other countries in the regions and beyond. Every day, the disease transmissions remain uncontrolled. The likelihood also spread to infected countries increases. Ebola outbreak could get out of control.
And so the control measures that we need to put into place have not been adequately put into place. So we are now agency that we have never experienced before, and it was entirely a new situation in our country. In the country that are involved have long stretched borders, very porous borders. People have that we have never experienced before. And so the control measures that we need to put into place have not been adequately put into place. So we are now gearing up to that. So we need to move it very fast so that it doesn't get out of control. This is going to challenge all of our development agenda, our infrastructure. It's going to challenge all of the gains we have made since we came to power. And so the international community need to look at this as an emergency of a high magnitude for us.
This has been an issue since March, a growing issue since March. We're now at 700 plus individuals have died. How was more not done prior to this time?
Individual countries can attest to what they've been doing, but when this started, it was entirely a new situation in our country. And the countries that are involved have long stretched borders, very porous borders. People have relatives living on both sides of the country. There was a lot of denial because people felt that this was a scheme maybe to for something else. We believe that the response was there, but it needed to be more urgent, and the decisions we took were to match the spread.
Is there a timeline where the President, yourself, the administration wants this issue to be contained, or thinks that this issue can be contained?
We believe in about a month, as we begin to move with the same vigor and trying to raise the campaign at the level the President did by bringing in setting up a committee that is all inclusive, working with the local communities, trying to see about the borders, deploying the security, the police and the soldiers to make sure that the health care workers are protected.
Do you foresee specific requests to other institutions like the World Bank or IMF?
That's why we
CDC's prevention advice. The CDC has issued the guidelines reading identity, isolate, diagnostic, and treatment patients. There is also specific guides for island flight crews, cleaning personnel, and care personnel to minimize their risk of exposure. CDC Director's School of Ebola Crisis Unprecedented.
The U.S. is working in a coordinated way to support partner governments and the World Health Organization. I have activated the CDC Emergency Operations Center at level 1 for this outbreak.
The health official leading the U.S. response said Thursday the current Ebola crisis in West Africa is on pace to sicken more people than all other previous outbreaks of the disease combined.
We're pretty confident that the normal isolation protocols in U.S. or Western-style medicine would prevent transmission.
The next few weeks will be critical, said Dr. Tom Frieden, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is sending more workers into the affected countries to help.
Capable of handling patients of this nature. We have a special containment unit which has been...
Frieden told a congressional committee Thursday it'll be a long and hard fight. In his prepared testimony, he estimated it would take at least 3 to 6 months to end the outbreak under what he called the best-case scenario.
Key preventive interventions. The first, meticulous infection control in healthcare settings. The greatest risk of transmission is not from patients with diagnosed infections, but from delayed detentions and installations. And third, avoid handling average meat with animal hunters for sustenance and contact with bats, which may be the primary service of Ebola virus, can reduce the risk of initial introduction of Ebola virus into humans. which means consumption could be reduced through socioeconomic development and increased access to affordable protein sources.
Ebola, don't catch your breath.
Do you guys ever worry about Ebola? Do you think that's real?
No. The government said nobody should push me. If Ebola was here, a lot of people would be there.
Ebola, no Ebola in Nigeria.
Since February 2014, an outbreak of Ebola spread across West Africa, from Guinea to Sierra Leone, and now it's finally reaching the coast of Liberia and its capital, Monrovia. Confirmed by health officials, the deadly virus has already killed 7 people in Monrovia. Scientists speculate that a possible cause of the Ebola outbreak might stem from the prevalent consumption of bushmeat from animals like monkeys and fruit bats. The scientific concerns surrounding the consumption of bushmeat begin in our genes. Because we share 99% of our DNA with monkeys, the chances of an infectious and incurable disease like Ebola crossing over from a monkey to a human is exponentially higher than with any other animal.
Ebola is one of those words that you can say it anywhere in the world, and it invokes fear.
Dr. Joseph Fair is a renowned virologist who we met working out of a lab near Liberia's capital city of Monrovia. Take me through sort of the life cycle of the Ebola virus if someone catches it, if a person catches it.
So Ebola is what we know as a viral hemorrhagic syndrome, and so a syndrome is just like AIDS. Ebola is an aggressive hemorrhagic fever syndrome. Ebola in particular causes the walls of the capillaries to slightly separate and blood starts leaking. You'll get conjunctival injection, which is bleeding into the eye. That petechial hemorrhage and that leakage ultimately leads to shock and death, just like you would have with sepsis.
So you're bleeding out from the inside?
Basically, you're bleeding out from the inside. Your blood pressure is lowering to an amount, so when your capillaries are leaking, the blood is no longer being transferred through your body effectively. It is a very painful and agonizing death that no one would want to go through.
Despite the fact that I was now worried about bleeding from my eyes, we headed to a local lab where they were quarantining and testing for Ebola. The lab is an abandoned ape testing facility. Nobody was there save a few scientists with hazmat suits working on the outbreak. Behind those doors was Ebola culture, which was being used to compare to cases of reported Ebola throughout the country to see if it matched up.
Second, educating and supporting the community to modify long-standing local funeral practices to prevent contact with body fluids of people who have died from Ebola, at least temporarily until the outbreak is controlled. We close the second major route of propagation of the virus. Why no cure or prevention for Ebola?
Doctors in West Africa are fighting a losing battle. More than half of these patients could be dead in days.
Tragic for the people. Who are dying from it, but it really destabilizes whole societies.
Professor Peter Piot says hospitals are struggling, borders are closing, trade and commerce is grinding to a halt.
An unprecedented outbreak.
Piot co-discovered Ebola in Central Africa in 1976. Almost 40 years later, doctors still don't know how to prevent it or where it lurks between epidemics.
It came out of the blue in West Africa. We had no clue that it was circulating there.
One leading theory is bats are carrying Ebola, possibly spreading the virus to other animals and then to people. But testing that theory is really difficult because outbreaks are so rare and there's very little market demand for a vaccine.
Money for research often comes from the government. Countries like the U.S. worry Ebola could be used in a bioterror attack. U.S. studies have been promising. Piotr says right now, real-world testing is what patients desperately need.
See whether we can offer that to people suffering from an infection with up to 90% mortality.
The stakes have never been higher. For the first time, the virus is spreading across borders to populated areas.
It's far more difficult to control an epidemic such as Ebola when you go into the big cities, far more difficult to trace all the contacts, to isolate people.
Until scientists find a cure, doctors will keep struggling as Ebola keeps killing. Will Ripley, CNN, London.
Conclusions. Ebola is a painful reminder that outbreak anywhere can be a risk everywhere. The Global Health Security Agency aims to strengthen public health systems in countries that need it most in order to stop outbreaks before they become emergencies. We believe that stop outbreak is a way to leave behind a stronger system to identify, stop, and prevent future health threats is a moral imperative. Thank you.